Miraidon decks have a reputation for being fast, explosive, and easy to pilot. And sometimes, when everything lines up, this deck absolutely delivers on that fantasy. But other times, it really doesn't. Today, we're taking a look at the Miraidon EX Deluxe Battle Deck from the Pokémon TCG Live Shop, and figuring out whether this deck actually plays the way people expect it to, or if speed alone isn't enough. This is the Miraidon EX Deluxe Battle Deck, available in the Pokémon TCG Live Shop. For this review, I'm specifically playing the Deluxe version. I did test the standard Miraidon deck, and honestly, the list just isn't functional enough to fairly evaluate the archetype. The Deluxe version is objectively better. It has more structure, better card ratios, and a clearer game plan. So that's what we're working with today. As with my other live shop deck reviews, no upgrades, no substitutions, no optimization. The goal here isn't to turn this into a tournament list, it's to answer a simple question. What does this deck actually feel like to play straight out of the box? At a high level, this deck is trying to do a lot, and that's both its strength and its biggest weakness. The core idea is straightforward. Use Miraidon to establish early pressure, leverage future Pokémon synergies, and use Iron Hands to swing the prize trade in your favor. When it works, it feels great. Your ideal game starts with Miraidon in the active, using its ability to set up your board and apply pressure early. From here, the deck branches into two main lines: Miraidon EX as a consistent lightning attacker, or Iron Hands as a high-impact threat that can take extra prizes at key moments. The Future Pokémon package is meant to glue this together, giving you flexibility and access to different attackers depending on the matchup. The problem is that the deck often asks you to choose between setting up and attacking, instead of letting you do both smoothly. This deck doesn't need a perfect opening hand, but it really wants the right pieces early. Ideally, you're looking for Miraidon or Miraidon EX as your active, Techno Radar or Nest Ball to establish your board, Lightning Energy so you're not stuck passing, and some form of draw to avoid stalling out immediately. When that happens, the deck feels fast and proactive. When it doesn't, you can end up with hands that look playable on paper but don't actually advance your game plan in a meaningful way. That tension defines most of your games with this deck. The biggest strength of this deck is burst potential. When everything lines up, Miraidon comes online early, Iron Hands threatens massive prize winnings, and your opponent is forced to respond immediately. Those turns feel powerful. There are games when Iron Hands takes a knockout and suddenly the prize race flips completely, and in those moments, this deck feels dangerous. The deck also has flexibility. You're not locked into a single attacker, and you often have multiple lines you can pursue depending on what your opponent is doing. That gives the deck a high ceiling, especially in matchups where your opponent can't punish slow turns. There's also the niche case where you can shut out your opponent on turn 2. Here, you can see my opponent only has an active Abra with nothing on the bench. Between the 40 damage from Peak Acceleration and the additional 20 damage from Future Booster Energy Capsule, I'm able to quickly close this game out. It felt great, but it's definitely an exception and not the rule. Where this deck struggles, and it struggles pretty consistently, is engine support. Unlike decks like Mewtwo or Charizard, this list doesn't have a true engine. It has draw, but it doesn't have structure. You're relying heavily on Professor's Research, Youngster, and raw top decking. That means dead turns happen more often than you expect, missed trainers feel devastating, and momentum is easy to lose once you fall behind. I had multiple games where I had attackers in play and energies available, but no clean way to progress the board without burning resources inefficiently. And because the deck is juggling multiple attackers, multiple energy types, and multiple game plans, missequencing is punished hard. This deck does not carry you through mistakes. It's also easy for you to end up stuck with a Pokemon in the active that you can't swap out. Because the Pokemon in the deck tend towards higher retreat costs, and with only 2 copies of Professor Turo to rely on for pickup, You're more prone to falling into this situation than with some of the other decks we've looked at, and it shows. The deck does play copies of Rescue Board to try and get around this, but Iron Hand still takes 2 to retreat even with Rescue Board attached, so it only helps so much. The Miraidon EX Deluxe Battle Deck is a really interesting case. It's clearly better than the standard version. It's faster, it's more coherent, but it still doesn't offer the same safety net as other live shop decks. This is a deck that looks smooth, promises speed, and delivers explosive turns, but it asks a lot from the pilot in return. If you're looking for a forgiving deck that sets itself up consistently, this probably isn't it. If you're a new player getting into the game for the first time, or if you're getting back into it after a hiatus, you're going to want to play with something more reliable and focused than the strategy this deck provides. This deck is almost certainly going to punish you for the minor mistakes and misplays you're guaranteed to make as a newcomer or a returning player who's a little rusty. If you're comfortable managing momentum, sequencing carefully, and accepting some feast or famine games, there is power here. However, if you're an advanced enough player that you're able to effectively manage the resources of this deck, I suspect you aren't taking pre-built decks into casual. If you do somehow manage to fall into this extremely narrow niche, just know what you're signing yourself up for. If you've played the Miraidon EX Deluxe deck yourself, I'm really curious how your experience compares. Did it feel explosive? Did it feel inconsistent? Or did it land somewhere in the middle? And if you want to see a comparison between the Deluxe and the Standard version, a potential upgrade path, or how this deck stacks up against other live shop options, let me know. We've got plenty of places we can go from here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.